Hey everyone, I'm your friend Buster Green, and welcome back to my Witch from Mercury comprehensive review. Today we are up to episode 19 of season 2. If you're new to the channel, as of today, I'm 107 watch hours from getting monetized. This is a freakishly small number, so once again, if 1,000 people can watch this whole video without skipping anything, that will get me monetized. Or 107 hours, that's just 5 days. So if one really nice person could leave my channel playing on loop for the next 5 days, that would work too. I'm super excited to finally get paid for making these videos, as I've had no job for several months now, and this is what I like to do. Anyway, let's lead off this episode with G-Witch Meme Roundup and a recap of the last episode. So if you missed the last episode, Soletta finally met face-to-face with her older sister Eri, the ghost in the aerial Gundam, who despite looking like a baby is actually a fully grown, growth-stunted 21-year-old. Eri then proceeded to be an outright monster, kicking Soletta into the vacuum of space, while proclaiming Soletta to be an obsolete key. People online noticed that this could be reinterpreted as Soletta being the key to stopping Eri, in the event that Eri is the real psychopath responsible for all Soletta's previous kills. But yeah, the big meme at the end of episode 17 was that Mercury Tanuki was ejected, or in other words, Soletta ejecta. I can't. Alright. Also, in a moment showing how much better Soletta is than Miorine, in this episode, when Miorine saw Soletta get ejected into the vacuum of space, she felt and did nothing about it. While meanwhile in episode 1, Soletta did everything in her power to save Miorine when she was in the opposite situation. Also, kudos to whoever made this hilarious art of Soletta living free in space, summing up the current situation where we are now. So yeah, Soletta is finally free of all her friends and family, and yeah, this is just a great piece of art. But anyway, yeah, Soletta is the biggest wild card in the series right now. I personally think that unless Ghoul ends up using the Gundam for Rosette, I really think Soletta might take it. Some other people agree with me, and here's a meme about how the Gundam might kill her if she takes it, however. But anyway, as we continue on, the show is growing more and more serious, and there are heavy concerns that either Eri or Soletta will eventually go on a massive killing spree and kill all their enemies. Another bizarre, hilarious thing that went viral after episode 18 was Cecilia Dote's incredibly weird move on Martin in the school's bizarre Catholic confessional. Once again, weirding me out that the Atasia School of Technology has a Catholic confessional. But was this Cecilia's true role all along? Was she some kind of weird teenage guidance counselor? Is this how she has a seat on the elite school council? Or has she just been using the confessional to gather secrets and blackmail, and that's how she worked her way up the ladder? Either way, every week some people draw horny fan art of Cecilia, and this week they switched up and decided to draw her dressed as a sexy nun. Yahoo! Although one guy went viral drawing her as Lucy from the Peanuts, which is also a pretty astute comparison. Anyway, the last meme of the series is that the next arc or so of the show is based on the Ghoul, Miorine versus Shaddiq political election, which is an unjarringly disturbing parallel for the previous 2016 American presidential election with, those two characters. Anyway, people are making a lot of jokes about this, but I'm going to freak out if people start drawing Shaddiq as horrible Bashonen Donald Trump. Anyway, keeping this election arc in mind, here's some new official art by the series illustrator Ipie Gyobu, showing Yule and Miorine gracing the cover of a fake Time magazine ripoff, strictly about the election, and they look pretty awkward at this cover. Like they're trying to look funny, or they're trying to look like they're the underdogs. I don't know what this is about, but anyway, Ghoul and Miorine are on the way to Earth to drum up votes to beat Shaddiq, and they've gone with Captain Fatboy as their lead security guard. Miorine, for some reason, is really into him. I guess she's just never seen a fat guy before. And here's a hilarious meme explaining how indirectly awkward it is that the two of them are instant friends. Now, that's the end of Meme Roundup. Let's finally get into episode 19. So episode 19 starts off with a big fancy look at the Earth, hyper-focused on Israel, Egypt, the general Middle East area, which is, as you all know, the most conflicted area in the Earth for the past 50 years. We see the ship closing in on Earth, and there's some minor technical information about how the ship works. It's a different ship than the one they left on, which is confusing. Anyway, this is Miorine's first time visiting Earth, but she can't be happy because it's just a sad business trip. Captain Fatboy comes out and mentions that he hates the Earth because gravity makes him feel fat, and that makes him feel painful and uncomfortable. It makes me also kind of semi-aware of how many Spacians in the show are kind of obese. Anyway, Ghoul is oddly suspicious of Kananji, and he seems extremely pensive about going back to Earth because the last time he was on Earth, he saw that poor little girl die, and it's still, troubling his soul. Meanwhile, Prospera is sitting in the Ariel, talking to her manservant, who suddenly has these little Pippi Longstocking pigtails all of a sudden. Did he always have those? I feel like I definitely have seen them before. What the hell? Anyway, it's hard to take him seriously now that he has pigtails, but Prospera is in mad fuck everything I'm Char mode, and her guy tells her that the cops are trying to close in, and she's like, I don't care, I'm about to kill so many people right now, ha ha ha, which is like, what? What the fuck are you about to do, Prospera? Alright, so we go to Earth House, and Soletta has made it safely back home, but she is emotionally devastated, and she has finally removed her headband, which is a big thing because that headband was her mom's headband, and I think her taking it off represents that she is no longer going to listen to her mom, and maybe she won't be her mom's puppet anymore. Anyway, then everyone notices Martin is missing. Hard cut to Martin, who has now become Cecilia's slave. Hilarious. Quentin Tarantino, completely wrote this scene because Cecilia is getting, such a foot rub from Martin. Anyway, Cecilia points out that since Nika disappeared, Cecilia thinks that Nika is a terrorist, and because she's a terrorist, she thinks that she's going to come back and murder Martin because Martin snitched her out. And she's being a real racist bitch about it. So her blatant racism makes Martin finally lose his shit, and he explodes on her. But surprisingly, Cecilia immediately counters him with her advanced nun psychology and tells Martin that Martin's a shitbag. He's not mad at her. He's mad himself because he did such a bad job communicating with Nika, who was his senpai. Anyway, he strangely accepts all this is true, and he starts to break down. And as he's breaking down, she puts her spit-covered lollipop directly in his mouth, and holy fuck, Martin is just overwhelmed. He can't take any of this shit because Cecilia is such a fucking powerhouse. Then we go back to Earth. On Earth, we see this very elaborate space dock facility machine thingy mabob. So Mirin, Prospera, Ghoul, Kananji, they all land in this kind of capsule lander machine. It looks a lot like the elevators that move the mobile suit around. So yeah, they're caught in this catching station, and then they immediately drive out of it in their limousine off to solve peace in the Middle East. While Prospera is flying through the sky in the aerial Gundam, still with that very hardcore murder face of hers, getting ready to murder someone. By the way, I quickly have to wonder, since Ghoul won the aerial off of Soletta, did he just give it to Prospera, or did Prospera buy it back for him, or perhaps Ghoul still owns it and he hired Prospera to pilot it because she's the only one who knows how to do it? Many questions about what the legal situation is between the aerial Gundam and Prospera and Ghoul right now. But besides all that, meanwhile, real Elon, Shadiq, and the Pale Witches are all hanging out together watching Mirin on the TV, and Belle is getting an interrogation from Fat Lady Cop, who seems to be the good cop in the good cop, bad cop duo, and because she's the good cop, she's trying to bribe Belle with so much cake. Oh my god, she is Cake Cop. That's her whole deal. She gives all these people cake, and then when they don't eat it, she eats it herself, and that's why she's so fat. Anyway, they mentioned that Belle has to help them with their investigation because as it stands, Prospera has set up Belle as a scapegoat for breaking the cathedral cords with all the Gundam stuff. So Belle is facing some serious charges if she doesn't solve Prospera. Anyway, Mirin finally arrives on Earth, and the crowd is just not happy to see her. They all have angry signs, and they all are saying that mobile suits are weapons of wars. And so Ghoul gets out of the limo, and he has immediately PTSD when he sees a kid that looks a lot like the kid from the terrorist camp. I don't know if it's the same kid, but Ghoul thinks it is, so he goes to chase after him, and Kananji chases after Ghoul because Ghoul is a major political figure. And then Mirin goes in it alone to negotiate with the Earthian politicians inside the political building. So yeah, at first glance, Mirin comes off as kind of naive and uninformed, and they refuse to shake her hand because they think she's just a kid. Mirin explains that she has this grand plan to rebuild the cities on Earth, create more factories, create more jobs, help everyone out. But the Earth politicians immediately slam Mirin that 1,500 people have gone dead or missing since the Plant Quetta investigations, and they're pissed about that. Some of them were tortured. They don't know where these people are, and they think most of them are dead. Mirin tries to defend herself because she really wasn't involved in any of that, but they slam her that they want Spacians banned from Earth because the current situation makes cooperation unsustainable. Now, meanwhile, we go to Jaturkhouse. In Jaturkhouse, a lot of Neil is like floating around, and he finds the Gundam Chorzette, and he's like, "Ugh, Gundam! I hate it!" Because he hates all Gundam, and he thinks Mirin made the Gundam, and I guess he doesn't like Mirin much either. Although, would he like her now that she's going to be his potential sister-in-law? Drama. So anyway, then we flip over to Shadik's sex dungeon room, where Noria is just trying to straight up lose her mind. And Nika is just bored and trapped in a room with the craziest people on the show. And Elon 5 notices that Noria is having a nervous breakdown, so he uses this as an excuse to steal her sketchbook. And he's really, really impressed at how good all her sketches are. But Noria is like, "Give that back to me! You can't touch it! You can't see it!" Ah! And Elon 5 and Noria are having a wrestling match. Oh my god! So Noria fully loses her shit, and she wants to kill people because she's like so upset that Sophie Poloni is dead, and she's stuck in this damn sex dungeon, and she doesn't want to die. And Nika just doesn't get it. But Elon 5, he completely gets it, and he's starting to fall in love with her. And wow. I didn't expect that, like, after being trapped in, like, a room together for 3 months, they'd eventually, like, fall in love, but stranger things have happened in tightly closed spaces. Anyway, back on Earth, Mirin shows off her dorky Gundam Company video, and then she brings out her prosthetic legs, and she's like, "Hey, Earth people, I want to make these on Earth," and she finally addresses the proposed Earthian immigration lockout, and Mirin finally takes a stand and rejects it outright because she's a member of Earth House. All her friends are Earthians, and if the Earth and space get separated, she'd literally lose all her friends, which is based. That's awesome, Mirin. Very based, Mirin. Good job. Anyway, so yeah, Mirin is going to do the classic Gundam Princess thing and try to seek peace and coexistence, and an immigration lockout does not work towards peace or coexistence. The Earth leader is completely apprehensive of Mirin, but agrees to maybe work with her if she can become president. And so as a sign of good faith, he agrees that he's going to have his people stand down and try to have no rioting for the next 10 days and also bring back the protesting, which will give Mirin the time she needs to win the election. He's also really intrigued about the Gundam medical technology because he's a former doctor, and he thinks it's kind of cool. Now, then we finally go back to Soletta. Soletta wakes up with her hair all free because now she's Free Soletta. Free Soletta goes down to the fridge and she's stealing Choo-Choo's food. Choo-Choo immediately catches her stealing her food, and she's having none of that. So she forces Soletta to go eat breakfast and give her back her hand. Now the Earth House kids are having this like super nice, super wholesome breakfast. They give Soletta breakfast soup? Oatmeal? What the fuck is breakfast soup? Anyway, Soletta loves breakfast soup, and seemingly she goes back to normal because the breakfast soup is just that freaking good. Martin finally comes back from Cecilia's sexy torture chamber and confesses to everyone that Nika was working to terrorists. He knew, but he didn't tell anyone. And Soletta defends Nika and said that Nika was only working with the terrorists to stop Sophie and Noria. And then Choo-Choo gets really pissed off because she hates terrorists, and now she hates Nika by extension. But Till, the quiet kid who only speaks up when something's really, like, not right, he declares that Nika did that to defend herself, and he didn't know that Martin was troubled by all that. But there's no time for that. Martin needs to get back to his chores and, like, feed the goats and shits. Anyway, all the Earth House kids have a super nice, super wholesome moment together, and that makes Soletta realize something, but she doesn't say what yet. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Ghoul has changed back into his tortured Bob clothes, and he talks to the kid who turns out really was the exact same kid from the terrorist camp. And I thought he was just like a lookalike, but it's actually the same kid. Now, surprisingly, the kid has come to Ghoul to ask Ghoul to give him sanctuary in space because they're sort of friends, because he like watched him in the bathroom one time. Anyway, he's hoping that Ghoul can give him like a full pardon, a full refugee status, and like send him to school. And Ghoul is just like not sure how to do that, so he acts kind of uninterested about it because he's not sure how he would do that. But they start like discussing the idea, and they mention that Shadik apparently does it all the time. So then the kid starts really running his mouth about the connections he has to the Planet Quetta incident and the prince who coordinated the incident. And we all know Shadik did it, and this is the moment that Kananji realizes it, because everyone calls Shadik the prince. And then Kananji pops the kid aggressively onto the wall, and the kid like just spills his guts that Shadik like fucking organized the terrorist incident, and Kananji realizes that everything the kid's saying lines up with Shadik's canon backstory, and Even though that lines up with his backstory, it completely contradicts the criminal record. So that means that Shadiq has been lying to the cops, and Kanaji has this like, oh fuck moment. Now at this point, Ghoul also has an oh fuck moment where he also realizes that Shadiq was the mastermind of playing Quetta, so he immediately emerges, he calls Miorine. But Miorine is like, wait, he did? Well, even if he did, you have zero evidence, so you can't convict him, so what are you gonna do? So anyway, Kanaji and Ghoul decide to leave the Earth to like try and arrest Shadiq, while Miorine stays there and like tries to like continue negotiating with the Earth. Now, this should all have gone well, but at this point, Prospera and Ariel finally pop out of their box. Prospera puts a data storm over the entire city, and she uses the data storm to remote puppet the Earth mobile suits to create a false flag attack against herself. Then she uses the false flag attack as a pretense to start a fight against the Earth in self-defense. And here we have it, Prospera finally started a fucking war on her own right here. She goes back to her weapons truck, which she has, and she pulls out the Ariel's beam rifle. Then she immediately flies into this hangar on the other side of town, and she pulls out Sophie and Noria's Gundam data, and she starts reading it aloud as she like looks over all these like old-fashioned Gundam elf riffs from the prologue, and then she finally just pulls out her Super Buster rifle and destroys them all. So yeah, Prospera has just created a false flag attack on the Earth as cover so she could destroy all the Earth Gundams because she doesn't want the Earth having Gundams. Anyway, the battle starts to super intensify as the Earth guys just start shooting up Cathedral, and Cathedral starts shooting back, and all the Earth leaders immediately get completely disgusted with Miorine because the Earth leaders know they didn't start the battle, so they blame Miorine and they leave. Meanwhile, back in space, Belle decides that she's finally going to sell out Prospera, so she informs the fat lady about Prospera's Quiet Zero plan. And just as that's starting to get interesting, Prospera's manservant comes out from behind a corner and he kills Fang, the fat lady. Now, surprisingly, Belle and the other cop escape through an elevator, though, and that's very dramatic. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Earth is a complete flaming hellscape. Noria gets even more pissed that Earth people have been hurt, and OG Elon thinks it's hilarious because that's exactly what he expected would happen when Miorine went to Earth. Shadiq realizes that Prospera knew about Shadiq's crimes and the Earth Gundam plan because all his Earth Gundams have been destroyed, and he gets really, really pissed at her, but then he gets even more pissed that Ghoul is using Miorine to push his political agenda because he himself wanted to use Miorine to push his political agenda. Then we finally get back to Suletta, who is just like a second after we last saw her, and she's having this big brain moment where she realizes that Eri ejected her because she knew her mom was on the verge of committing more war crimes, and she didn't want Suletta being caught up in the war crimes. Meanwhile, Miorine is just staring into the fire, realizing that her actions have caused even more war crimes. And that's where the episode ends. But by the way, blink and you'll miss it, and there's a subtle note on the TV that the attack from Prospera apparently polarized the Earth politicians so much that they're fully declaring independence from space at this point, which is a nice inversion on the typical Gundam space versus Earth independence war trope. Oh, and after the credits, there was some trippy art of Miorine and Prospera drawn like an American cartoon. Anyway, wow, that episode was nuts. Okay, I feel like this episode should have been a bigger deal, but this episode had too many events crammed into not enough runtime, so the events were packed too tightly to let all of them breathe. So let's do a quick depack on this episode. Cecilia made Martin her slave for the day, but seemingly she only did this so he could successfully have a character epiphany and realize that maybe Cecilia actually really is the best school counselor ever. I don't know, he's got her spit in her mouth. Anyway, meanwhile, Suletta was wrecked the whole episode and seemingly bounced back amazingly pretty fast with constant support from Choo-Choo and her own bizarre worldview. Suletta might not be a hero, but at least we have another episode where she was barely impacted by the plot, and she somehow managed to progress forward while doing very little and barely getting out of bed. Miorine, meanwhile, had a horrible day, and despite doing the best politicking she could do, she has been more deeply exposed to the horrors of war, and her first negotiations with the Earth almost worked out until Prospera ruined it trying to de-arm the Earth witches. Part of me thinks Prospera could have pulled this off legally just by like working with, like, the authorities, but she would never do that because the authorities killed her people. So, yeah, I have an extra level of respect for Prospera that she couldn't trust the cops, so she had to do it herself, especially since she created the Elf-Earth Gundam in the first place that all the Earth Witches technology is derived from. Plus, now that I think about it, the Earth Witches would have had to have come to Cathedral in the first place, so there had to be some kind of underhand deal between Shaddiq, Grassley, and Cathedral in that they were collecting the Gundams they were supposed to destroy and then feeding them to the Earth Witches. Anyway, a big reveal in this episode was that Ghoul finally figured out what Shaddiq was up to, and so now Shaddiq and Ghoul just straight up hate each other. Ghoul has finally realized that Shaddiq was the terrorist mastermind who potentially orchestrated the incident that indirectly killed his father, and Shaddiq is just mad that Ghoul is one day going to get in Miorine's pants, and Shaddiq's reasons are so much more pitiful, but nonetheless, this sets up life and death consequences between them, because on the one hand, we have Ghoul, who loved his dad but accidentally killed him, and Shaddiq, meanwhile, captured his dad for power and political gain. So yeah, they're arch enemies now. And meanwhile, lastly, in this episode, Feng died, surprisingly, after finally getting some decent character development for the first time ever. I guess her entire backstory was that she was the best cop in space, and her interrogation method was bribing people with high-class desserts, but when the people didn't eat them, she ate them herself, and this eventually made her into a BBW. Damn, I wish she had her own show. Cake Cop, Fat Cop in Outer Space. Anyway, she eventually got killed by Pippi Longstocking Man, which is officially this guy's name until he takes off these pigtails. I have got to check previous episodes. Did this guy always have prominent pigtails? They're so prominent in this episode. What the hell? Anyway, yeah, Feng is the fourth major character in the show to die after Elan 4, Ghoul's dad, and Sophie. And once again, the show has committed a classic anime scene of making a character the most interesting right before they kill them off. This has kind of been par for the course of the show, but damn it, I kind of wish Feng and Sophie were still alive because they just kept getting more and more interesting. Anyway, so yeah, this puts things into another horrible endgame situation where Bell and the space cop are trying to shut down Quiet Zero until or unless Prospera's manservant can kill them first. Original Elan just seems to be like laughing his ass off at everyone's tragedy, while Elan 5 and Noria seem like they're about to make out, and Nika is still in this traumatized room of what the fuck. Shaddiq and Ghoul are finally about to have a dramatic Gundam fight showdown, while Miorine and Shaddiq are also somehow having a political showdown. It's a very political election debacle. And now the Earth is finally declaring independence, but if Kananji is going to arrest Shaddiq, maybe he's got enough evidence, maybe he doesn't. Either way, I think somehow Shaddiq will side with the Earth in the whole independence war and like get immunity that while. And yeah, Soletta barely got out bread and just ate breakfast soup. I'm kind of let down Prospera didn't kill any more people in this episode. I was really expecting her to go full murder spree. Maybe it'll happen next week. Either way, that was a jam-packed episode with a lot going on, and I like this episode, but yeah, this could have been 2 episodes. I like this episode a lot. I really like the developments with like Martin and Miorine and Ghoul, but I feel like everything that happened with like Bell and Feng and Prospera and Soletta, that all could have been like another episode entirely. Like so much went down in this episode. Alright guys, I'll see you next week where I'm hoping Prospera kills more people. Alright, please subscribe, please watch 2 more of my videos. 107 hours is a criminally small amount. If every one of my subscribers just watched this video, I would get there. Alright, later guys, bye.